Hello and welcome to another episode of Front End Horse Live. We've got Chris here. Chris, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well. Thanks for having me, Alex.
I am very, very excited to have you on. I'm a huge fan of your stuff. You have been, for the longest time, the vanilla JavaScript guy, and I think you do a great job of explaining things. I can't tell you how many times I've searched for like JavaScript, I don't know, like array something or do this in JavaScript, and one of your articles has come up. You have saved my butt so many times, and I'm just thrilled to have you on here. We already have a packed chat. Very excited for this one. El Evidente's here. Lo-Fi Codes, welcome. Great to have you here. Ben, good to see you. Steph, great to see you. Divya, hi, how you doing? So many good people. Prince is here. Thank you so much for, oh, and Sultan Burnham, how's it going? Good to see you. So, Chris, for people who might not know you, oh, and Prince agrees, all your blog posts, like you are just one of those people that I have found your resources so many times, and it's very, very helpful. So, for anyone who might not know who you are, can you give us a brief introduction?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I am known on the web as the Vanilla JS guy. I didn't come up with the term, but I do spend like all of my time on the internet, either garbage tweeting or evangelizing using browser native JavaScript and APIs. My whole kind of thing is I believe there's maybe a simpler, more resilient way to make things for the web. I had a really tough time learning JavaScript, and so a lot of what I do is focused on helping people who are going through a similar journey to the one I went on, maybe have a slightly easier time with it than I did.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think there's also something to be said with not pushing people into frameworks on day one. Like, hey, welcome to web development. Go learn React, and you'll figure out JavaScript eventually. You'll kind of get there, and just don't worry about it. Like, I think you focusing on vanilla JavaScript and just making sure that you have strong fundamentals there, you can take that with you pretty much anywhere. So I think that your resources and just kind of what you're preaching, for lack of a better term, is very needed, and I fully support it. You've got my vote. So yeah. So awesome. Here's Chris's excellent website, which if you've Googled JavaScript things in the past, you've probably been on. So half of you are going, yep. I've seen this. I know this site. And here is Chris's Twitter. So I'm going to drop that there. It's jQuery all over again, except jQuery did useful cross-browser things at the time. And thank you, Lo-Fi Codes. Chris is a hero. Yeah, well, loving the decorations. Love it. Chris and I have a good backstory. Ooh, I'll have to figure that out or hear about that in the Discord maybe. But Jester Shark, thank you for the follow. So, Chris, what are we going to be doing today? You actually came to me with an awesome idea, and I'm like, yeah, we've got to do that. So, what are we working on?
So it's going to be way less aesthetically beautiful than a lot of the stuff you do on your site, but hopefully it's going to be really useful. So we're going to be building a JavaScript library from scratch, specifically around working with dates, which are right now a huge pain in the butt. They are going to get easier, hopefully sometime in the near future with a new API that's coming out. But it's not there yet. And the focus on this isn't really about working with dates so much as learning some of the fundamentals of putting together tools or libraries that are intended to be used by others or across multiple projects. So we're going to start small, and we're going to scale it up by layering in additional features. And so you'll kind of get to see the whole start to finish, what my process looks like. And along the way, we're going to talk about some of the decisions you have to make and why you might choose one approach versus another, pros, cons, trade-offs, all that sort of fun stuff.
Awesome. So the date library is not necessarily like the end goal or the real purpose here. That's just kind of the vessel. It's the example that we're using to show those best practices and to show how to do various things.
Yeah, dates are particularly useful for this exercise because you can structure your library in a couple of different ways with them. They cover just a wide gamut of different things, so we can package it in a few different ways, and it'll still be a useful library either way.
Awesome.
And it's technically a little bit easier than some of the other things we could put together. So it's a really nice kind of starter project, and then you can take what you've learned and use it to go build your own stuff.
I think that's fantastic. Those kinds of like reusable lessons are absolutely the best. Let me actually find, so that people, if they would like to follow along, let me find the link that you sent me to the repository so I can drop that in chat. I have the repo. Yeah.
If it's easier for folks, if you go to gomakethings.com/frontendhorse, you can get the source code, some other boilerplate stuff, and a bunch of other resources related to what we're going to be talking about today.
Love it. He is so prepared, ladies and gentlemen. You have no idea. He just came in. He's ready. He's set. I can actually, Chris, if you don't mind, I've got a thing. You can just take it from here. I'm gonna hop off. All right. No. So
if you want me to share my screen, it'll be more fun if we chat. But
yeah.
Whatever works for you, Alex. You gotta go Christmas shopping. That's fine.
Yeah. Oh shoot, I probably should. I forgot about that. So this is the library that Chris put together for us. As you might be able to tell from the title, make a JavaScript library from scratch. This is like very, very, very bare bones. So there's not like a ton of stuff here just yet, but I'm sure we're going to walk through that in a sec. But just wanted to give you the chat the opportunity to check it out. And you even got an outline together for us. I really appreciate that.
No worries.
So did
I spell chainable wrong? I think I did spell chainable wrong. Cool.
I don't think so.
Oh man,
it's just I just think it doesn't. It's one of those words where it's like technically not a word, but it's a word that developers use all the time. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Because like who besides programmers would say like, oh, that's a very chainable fence. Like, no, that's not a thing that people would say normally.
So yeah, let's if you want, we can start by just kind of looking at some of the boilerplate. We don't need package.json or rollup config just yet. We'll tackle those at the end.
Cool.
Good place to start might be the index.html file,
awesome.
Just because there's basically nothing there. So all we really need, all the action here is going to happen in the console for this library. And eventually we are going to need to spin up a local development server if you have the ability to do that. But we won't need it at first.
Cool.
I didn't include that in my package.json, and if I were a better person, I would have. So I'm really sorry. Should have mentioned that during our like pre-stream talk. Sorry, Alex.
All good. How would you want me to do that?
That's a great question.
How would you recommend I do that?
So is that something you normally do? If not, I can drop a link to a bunch of command liney ways you can do that. If you have MAMP or WAMP installed on your machine, you could do that.
Yeah, that's what that's what I thought you meant by that. I do not have either of those.
Okay. So
which honestly, I've been happy not having to be in that realm for a bit. Battling with WordPress and MAMP and WAMP, I don't miss that, but I think it's just because I never like properly learned. I just learned kind of enough to. Emit, thank you so much for the 4-month sub. Great to see you. I really appreciate it. Wow.
Let me grab a URL for you.
And we got raided. Can't I do, San? Thank you so much for the raid. Really appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. We're just getting started. You are just in time.
Here we go. Let's see.
And Richard, thank you for the sub. My goodness. Chat is going crazy already. I love it. Wow, we're up to 62 people. Lots of people here.
All right. Alex, in the Discord, I just dropped a link to a big list of static server one-liners, depending on what you have going on your machine. So I don't know if you have Python installed. If not, there's like Ruby and a whole bunch of other options.
Pretty sure I got Python going. All right, so I can just grab this Python server 8000.
Yep, copy paste.
Cool.
And return.
All right, let's give it a try. It didn't like that. Should we go for Python 2 maybe? Let's see what it's yelling
maybe.
I found Python. Okay, of course. Yep. How do I not have? All right, Ruby. Okay, some of these are made up. That's not even.
That's not a real thing.
That's not a thing.
PHP?
Maybe. I don't know. At this point, I'm just like, I hope I've got some stuff installed on my machine. Yeah. Am I a real developer?
Oh, no.
Yeah, so this is just the...
and like this, our stream. Okay, well, Alex, this has been fun.
Here we go. We're just going to install Node Static globally. Let's
Oh, there
see
we
what
go.
we
That would have been
Good old
obviously the
NPM.
superior choice.
All good. NPM comes through.
There we go. Cool.
Theoretically, okay.
Okay.
So we
And
should
there
have
we
a
go.
thing
Now
here.
you have a okay, beautiful.
Thank
Perfect.
you, NPM.
Yes.
Appreciate it. All
All
right, we are
right.
back. We are back.
I don't know why I
chat.
didn't start there.
All
JavaScript
good.
guy here.
We got a hype train going. Nice.
Right. Oh my God. Cool. So for this, we're mostly going to keep the developer console open. That's where
Cool.
all of the fun stuff is really going to happen for this library. Cool. Awesome. So now if we jump back over to the boilerplate, I can talk you through what we have here.
Nice.
Inside the index file, I'm linking to two scripts, time.js and index.js. And time is where we're going to keep our library.
Okay.
Index.js is going to be like, if you were loading this library and then you were going to run some stuff with it on your site, all that stuff is in index.js. So that's like your site-specific code.
Okay. Cool.
So let's start by looking at time.js itself, actually. That's probably the better place to look. So I do not have a library in here right now. I have a small collection of helper functions. And so the thing with dates, there's a couple of weird quirks about it. We can create dates using the new date constructor. And then there's a bunch of methods available on that object to do things like get the day, get the month, get all sorts of information. But some of them are really weird. Like if you were to try and get the day associated with a date back, it doesn't return a string. It returns an index from 0 to 6 from Sunday through Saturday. Right. So the get day helper function takes that date and then gets a string-based day for you based on that index. You can see we have an array of days, and we're just going to grab the correct day at the correct index and return that out. Same thing with get month. If you were to try and get the month on a date, it's an index from 0 to 11 for January to December. And so we've got an array. We're going to get the month index, find the matching month string, and return it. Adding time to dates is also really weird. They have methods to get values and set values, but not add values. So if you were to say set the set the month in a date, you're not adding it to the existing month. Like let's say I wanted to change a date to March. No, I wanted to add, so I want to set a date to March. Okay. I would set date 2 because that's the, if you start at 0, again, with that weird index quirk, right?
Right.
But if you want to add months, you have to get the existing one and then add however many months you want to it and then pass that back into set month. And if you're working with this a lot, it becomes a real pain to manipulate dates. So I've got a whole bunch of helper functions here so that we don't even have to worry about that. I don't want you guys to think about how to manipulate the dates. That's something that the library is just supposed to take care of for you. We're going to take these functions and we're going to package them into a library in a bunch of different ways to help make this all a lot easier. If we just jump over to index.js for a sec. So here we are creating a new date object for Christmas, and the date object accepts a bunch of different ways to create a date. So you could pass in a string. You could pass in a timestamp, like a Unix timestamp. You could pass in a series of integers as a comma-separated list, starting with year, then month, then day, then hours, seconds. There's a whole bunch of ways you can create dates.
That's fun.
Which makes this whole thing even weirder. It's super annoying. And so here, in this file right now, we are using some of those helper functions. So I am getting the day, getting the month, logging those both to the console, adding some days and years to that date with our helper functions, and then logging the updated version of the date into the console as well. And if you were to jump over to your browser right now, you would actually kind of see these in action. So here, Christmas this year is on a Saturday. It's in December. And then if we add 7 days and 1 year to it, 7 days bumps you into January 1st, 2022. And then you add a year to it, and that takes you to 2023.
Got it. So it's working.
Yeah. So it's working. So we have some foundational stuff. Now let's make this an awesome library.
Got it. And just by library, you what is the goal of a library? Like when you say that, what does that mean to you?
Great question. So what we're trying to put together is a rather than just having like a loose collection of files like this, we want a prepackaged collection of utility functions or helper methods that are kind of scoped within a particular namespace or file. So the idea here is if someone else created a new function called getDay, I don't want it to interfere with any of our library functions. I want to be able to keep it in its own kind of little scope, but still be able to use it anywhere I want in my project. Eventually, as a long-term goal for this, we want to do things like support options. So right now it returns kind of Sunday through Saturday, full text English. Let's say someone wanted to change the language on those or use short forms like sun, mun, tu. We're gonna add some options so that people can customize the library without touching the core code. We're gonna just really make this a nice, flexible, extensible thing that you can use across a variety of projects without having to change a bunch of stuff every time you do it. We're trying to avoid the whole copy, paste, edit kind of thing.
Awesome. That sounds great. Very cool.
We are making a date library. I just saw the comment in the chat. Just so
Yeah. Oh, I should have put that. Let me quickly add that because that's a very good question. I have this little thing next to or underneath Chris that shows today's steps. Create a simple utility library for dates. Let's just add that, and then
Perfect.
that should update in a second.
Awesome.
Great question. Cool, and welcome everyone. This is a great turnout. So
Awesome.
yeah, we've got this going. What do we want to do first?
All right, let's jump over to time.js.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna say Ben in chat. Ben everywhere. Ben, it's always great to see you. Thank you for hosting the stream. Wow, that's very kind. Ben said something about JS docs. Do you know what he's referring to? It's a great use of JS docs.
Yes. So JS doc is a format for documenting your code, JavaScript specifically, but it's part of the doc blocker family of documentation. And so these comments you're seeing above each of the functions are in JS doc format, and it usually includes a short description of what the function does, and then tags for things like the parameters, the types of argument or types of values they accept rather, what they actually do, and then if anything gets returned out, what gets returned. This format is also used for things like PHP and a handful of other languages. And for a while, there was a push to implement it in CSS that never really caught on.
Got it.
But I use it anyways because I like it.
Yeah, it's nice.
Thank you for the compliment. So the first thing we're going to do, Alex, do you know how to create an immediately invoked function expression? If not, I can walk you through it.
A little iffy? Yeah, go ahead and walk me through it.
Cool. So for those of you who are listening and have never heard of this, an immediately invoked function expression, or IFFY, is a function that automatically invokes itself. So rather than you having to explicitly run it, it runs itself as soon as the file loads. And the reason you would use it is if you have code you just automatically want to run, but you want to keep it scoped and encapsulated, it provides a nice way to do that. So all the way up at the top of the file, before any of our kind of helper functions here, create an anonymous function for me. So we'll just, function, open and closing brackets, and then the little curly dudes. Now we're going to wrap this whole thing in parentheses. And at the end of it, we will include parentheses again. And so what we're doing is we're wrapping our anonymous function in parentheses, and then the opening and closing parentheses at the end automatically run this anonymous function. Often a good idea to drop a semicolon at the end, but they're optional in JavaScript, so do whatever you're comfortable with, Alex.
All set.
Cool. Now, so this is going to create the foundation for our library. And for this initial one, we're going to use an approach called a revealing module pattern. The way this works is it's an immediately invoked function expression that will return an object of methods that you want to expose publicly. And the nice thing about this pattern is if you ever had any sort of stuff that you wanted to keep internal and private for the library, you can have them in the function and they can be referenced by your public methods without being exposed for people to actually access externally. Nice. That's not really going to apply for us right now today, but it is a nice, just kind of a nice feature here. So
Cool.
what we want to do is we want to assign this IIFE to whatever we want our library to be named. In this case, let's go with maybe time. So if you want to, assign this to a variable.
It's like const time equals.
Yeah, const time
Cool.
equals. Perfect.
Whoa. Awesome. Sorry, I got to just pause you there. Mike, thank you for those gifted subs to Scott Riley, to Aaron, to El Suxo, Bentress, to View Gilmore. Wow. Thank you so much, Mike. Super, super generous of you. Chat's going wild. Chat loves making a JavaScript library, Chris. We got to do this more often. This is fantastic.
Who knew? Who knew?
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Awesome. So Alex, if we can copy and paste all of our helper functions into our IIFE,
okay,
that's going to keep them scoped within this time library.
And the comments? I assume?
Yeah. So just the whole shebang,
Cool.
copy,
Right,
paste, and
cool.
Now, now we have kind of this little wrapped up library here. Really nice. We have all these functions. Time is just going to be undefined. There's no, or not undefined, but it has no value. So all the way down at the bottom, like the very last thing inside our revealing module pattern here, we want to return an object. And we want to include all of our functions that we want publicly in here.
Okay.
Now, you can do this one of two ways. You can do it the hard way, like add years : add years, or we can use the ES6 object property shorthand. As long as the function name and the value you want associated with are identical, you can just call it a day.
Got it. I just realized that Ed just gifted 5 subs. This doesn't usually happen.
Dude,
Ed, thank you so much for gifting those subs. I was like, that noise is happening longer than 5 times. Ed, wow. Linzel, Art, Trout Soda, Steve, Salt and Burnham, and Brandon all just got subs thanks to Ed. Ed, thank you so much. Y'all are going wild. I love it. Wow. I think we keep that hype up all throughout the week. Bring that into Friday and let's crush that $10,000 goal. I'm super excited. Really appreciate it, everybody. Cool. So, just so I can repeat it back. Sorry for the interruptions, but chat, you are on fire. So I'm going to basically export an object that has get day, get month, add days, add months, add years. So
yes,
get month.
This is the most annoying part of the process. It'll be a lot easier from here. Just kind of getting that our initial library set up. And I can read them to you if it's helpful. I have it pulled up on my end.
I think I got them all. I think we had 3 addition functions and we had 2 gets, right?
Yeah, I kept this to a minimum. I had like a lot more. That would be cool. So
yeah,
awesome.
Cool.
So now if we jump over to index.js,
okay,
we now have a library of functions under the time namespace. So where we have get day, get month, add days, and add years, we actually want to call those on the time object. So time.getDay, time.getMonth, etc.
Cool.
And with this, we now have just a simple little date library. So if you wanted to build kind of like a starter utility library, it is that simple. We're going to do a whole bunch of other stuff to make it, I say better, but a little bit more robust. But this is kind of the starting point. This is what a lot of libraries are.
Right.
Should we jump over to the console just to make sure this actually worked?
Yeah, let's do that. I do just want to kind of go full circle with the JS doc where it shows up there, and that's really helpful. And I think Ben in chat said it's like it gives you the TypeScripty kind of information on hover without needing to use TypeScript.
Yeah, VS Code will do that for you automatically, which is really, really nice. It'll kind of pull up that reference for you. And here you can see same information. It's just now it's scoped to the time library. Awesome. And so you could kind of distribute that. All someone has to do is load time.js on their site, and now they have access to all this kind of stuff. So one of the, I don't want to say problems here, but one of the challenges with something like this is if you, we've included a bare minimum of helper functions here, but there's a lot you could do to add more features and more functionality. And over time, you could imagine the library starting to get really big. Right. And someone may not need all of those things. So I think a nice next step for us would be to convert this into an ES module where people can import just the functions they need from the library, and using a build tool, which we'll look at later, kind of tree shake out the stuff they don't need. So they're getting just the helper functions they need, nothing else.
Awesome.
So if you wouldn't mind jumping back over to time.js for me.
Absolutely.
The first thing we're going to do, and I'm sorry to make you do this, Alex, but we're going to rip out that revealing module pattern. So you can keep all the functions and keep the return for now. But kind of the wrapping function and variable name, we can just delete that right out.
So this bit.
So this goes away.
Cool.
And down at the bottom where we have return, we're going to change that to export. And so that's really the big difference here now. So what we're doing is instead of kind of encapsulating everything in function, we've got this ES module now that exports our helper functions. And to use them, we need to import them in our index.js file.
Okay.
So if we jump over to index.js, up at the very top, before anything else, we're going to import object, and then let's only import the functions we need. So in this case, get day, get month, add days, and add years.
And so we're leaving off add months just in case chat's wondering what we.
And so then we need to the file that's from to. Oh, look at that, man! That one line delete was really impressive. So weird thing about ES modules, they need to be prefixed with like a dot. So you can't just like from time.js. So we need to do ./time.js here.
That.
And then. And now, if we reload the browser, we'll save this and then reload the browser, we should see this still working.
Cool.
Yes. And so now we're, one other really kind of cool thing about, something we actually probably need to do here that we should do. It's interesting to me that this is still working. It technically shouldn't. In index.html, we can, first of all, we can remove time.js entirely. We don't need it anymore. And we need to change the index.js file to a module. So we want to add type equals module. This is only if you're trying to run ES modules natively in the browser, which there are reasons you might not want to do that, which we'll talk about later when we get into the bundling piece of this. But for now, that's what we want to do.
Awesome.
Cool. So that was step 2. Now we've got this little modular thing where let's say you had like 2 dozen different functions in your library. You are able to use just the ones that you need and not bring in the stuff that you don't. This also allows you to do things like if I'm importing a function that I already have a function with that name, I can rename it and still use it. So it allows you a lot of flexibility when you're using like this. And that's really when you're building a library, most important. Recognizing that people are going to use it in ways you didn't necessarily intend or think about. And so as much flexibility as you can bake in as possible is a good thing.
Good tip.
Cool. So this is helpful. It's a neat little library we have here. But we're going to shift gears a little bit and look at a different way to structure libraries. Where, like, let's say you're working with a bunch of dates and you're going to be making a lot of changes to them. And you don't want to have to keep creating new date objects, passing them into helper functions. You want to be able to create a new, instance and then call methods directly on it to get and set stuff from it. So you can think about it almost like, just referencing jQuery for a minute, if we're going to go old school, when you create a new jQuery instance, and then you can call methods like add class, or update text. Update text isn't a jQuery element, but you know what I mean. Calling methods on it. So we're going to shift to something a little bit like that. Using a constructor pattern and object-oriented programming. Cool. So for that, let's again jump over to the time.js file.
All right.
Awesome. So all the way up at the very top here, it's like you knew what I was thinking. So we're going to create a new function that's going to be our constructor object. And you can name this literally anything you want, but I am super duper lazy and I always name it constructor. I always call it constructor with a capital C in our case.
It's very clear though. I think that's
Yeah,
fine.
well, that's why I like it. I know
Yeah.
exactly what it does.
Yep.
We're not going to be using modern classes for this. I'm going to use like the old school constructor function approach.
Cool.
I think for people who are just learning, it's maybe a little bit more clear unless you come from a class-based learning already. Naming it constructor keeps it consistent with the way classes work. So when you do move into classes, it'll be a little bit more like of an easy transition.
Cool.
So what we want to do here, as a parameter on the constructor function, we are going to accept the date that we want to instantiate.
Okay.
And what we're ultimately doing is we are going to we're going to take whatever kind of date creation thing gets passed in, a string, timestamp, whatever, and we are going to create a new date object from it and save it as a property of the instance. And then you can do things like maybe we'll name the library time again. You'll be able to do something like Christmas equals new time, and then you pass in your date string, and it'll create a new time object. And then if you want to get the day, you can say Christmas.getDay to get that day back without having to pass in the date.
Got
it. Can we, inside the constructor function, assign a new internal property, this.date?
So just this dot date, just like that?
Yes.
Okay.
And inside a constructor pattern, or with a constructor pattern, this references the current instantiation. So for each instance, it's going to get its own little date property that's going to have the value we're about to create. And so that we can, as a value for that, we can say new date. We'll use that new date constructor similar to the boilerplate, and we'll pass in the date argument or parameter that we put up there.
Cool.
And now for our various little helper functions here, and we can even trim these down, Alex, if you don't want to keep like having to modify so many helper functions. We two for ease if you want.
I'm having a good time. It's all good. Yeah, I
Awesome.
think chat's loving it. Lots of new follows. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. I did send this out to my list a couple of times.
Oh,
Get
appreciate
some
it.
new folks who haven't heard of you.
Wow, awesome. Welcome, everyone. Appreciate it.
So for each of our helper functions now, instead of being standalone functions, we are going to, so get date, for example, or get day rather. We are going to, we're going to change that to constructor.prototype.getDay. And so that's going to assign it as a property of the instances that we create. So right there where you have get day.
Yeah.
I'll walk you through it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
So are you a constructor?
Here, watch. So delete out get day for a sec. Delete function. Let's do that.
Okay.
Oh, no, you're good. Okay, yes, delete function. So type constructor with a capital C. And the reason we do the capital is it's in JavaScript. It's how you delineate this is a thing that gets instantiated with a new operator versus just being a function. So constructor.prototype and then our get day. So we'll delete that space out. And then we're going to set this to equals function and then keep the date thing. So we're essentially assigning this anonymous function to the constructor prototype get day method.
Okay. And so I was expecting that we were going to do like this dot get day, but is there a reason it's just tidier to do it down here, or
it's a little bit tidier.
Okay.
Sometimes you do want to include it in the constructor, like if you have some properties you're creating inside the instance that you need the methods to have access to, but you don't want to well, there's two reasons actually that we'd want to do this. One other benefit of attaching it to the prototype like this is it creates a reference to this function that every instance will I'm trying to think of a word to not use reference twice, but we'll refer to.
Okay.
And it ends up using a lot less memory in the browser versus having unique properties get recreated with. So let's say you were creating, this is absurd, but like 500 dates. It's going to be a lot easier on the browser memory when you use a prototypal inheritance kind of pattern like this. So in here, we can, for this function, we can delete the date parameter. We don't need it anymore. Yeah, so that can go away. Okay. And we probably eventually might want to delete it from our JS docs, but I won't make that right now. And then where we have the date get day reference inside that return over there, we want to point to this dot date. And so this is going to grab that date parameter from the instance. We no longer need to pass it in as an argument. And now we want to repeat this process with our other functions here. Cool. So it's a little bit of copy paste, and I'm really sorry about that.
How dare you come into my
right?
All good. This is fine.
Once again, once we get this set up, it becomes a lot nicer. But you know, that initial kind of setup is, I don't know if is really annoying.
Yeah, if I know how to spell function right, it would be easier. But you know,
I literally copy paste that too when I'm doing this. I'm super lazy.
Add months, yeah. And then add years. Cool. And then every date is going to become, first off, so here, am I getting rid of date but keeping n?
Yeah, so anywhere that we have a date as a parameter, it can just go away. We don't need it anymore. And then, yep, you got it. This date, bam.
Let's get rid of this one. There is a question in chat that I will read out while I'm doing this this stuff.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Simple Sphere, first off, welcome to the stream. Great to have you. Given the different time zones, wouldn't it be preferable to normalize it to UTC and then use that as the starting point instead of it defaulting to your time zone?
It depends. So if you're looking to... what am I trying to say here? So if I'm trying to display a date in the user's local time, then I actually don't want to do that. If I was trying to kind of have some sort of universal date where something happened, and I want that to be kind of consistently reflected, I would use a UTC timestamp as my instantiator. So instead of passing in like December 25th, 2021, I would pass in whatever the UTC timestamp for that is. A lot of it depends. And for purposes of this library, I'm not really thinking about or worrying about that because I'm just using dates as like the peanut butter for the pill of learning how to create script libraries.
Nice. That's really good. Yeah. Yeah, you're just trying to get us to swallow it. Yeah, yeah. So right? in case you just joined chat, the goal is not to make the perfect date library. It's just kind of the medium or the peanut butter to teach us the greater skill of how to create a JavaScript library and kind of do these things like we're doing with the constructor type. So this is like an object-oriented approach. Yeah, so we're going through a few things, and dates just have a few use cases and functions and things that make it a good example. So this isn't like Chris is like, I'm coming for date FNS or I'm coming for moment JS. This is my new
if you're doing this for realsies, grab one of those libraries because they do it way better. But this is kind of like a little bit about how they work under the hood, just to give you a give you a sense. So the last thing we need to do, Alex, is instead of exporting now an object of functions, we are going to export default constructor.
Cool.
So default is saying that the constructor object is the default thing. When someone imports it, they don't need to wrap it in an object, and they can very easily rename it. Like whatever they import named thing from, it'll always be this constructor. Cool. The one thing you lose with this approach, with just object-oriented libraries, is you lose that tree shaking. And so I think about like moment.js or day.js are in this pattern, and there's a lot of really useful things about them. But something like date FNS allows you to, it's bigger by default, but if you're only using a handful of methods, it actually ends up being way smaller because you're just importing the things you need.
Yeah, you just basically have like this sort of thing versus an entire, Sorry, I cut you off.
And so, trade-offs. So if we jump back over to index.js, we're going to change the way we're importing this. right now using it.
Cool.
So we are going to import time, all caps, or not all caps, I'm sorry, title case.
Cool.
So time from time.js. And where we have let Christmas equal new date, we probably want to change that to new time. Create a new time object.
Okay.
And everywhere that we've got like get day, we're going to reference, or any of our methods, we're going to reference, Christmas dot get day, and we don't need to pass anything in.
Cool.
Christmas dot get month.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And so you can see like this isn't inherently better or worse than what we were doing before. It's just different ways to structure a library depending on how you want to work with it.
Yeah, that's great.
And then same thing down here.
So Christmas dot add days, but then get rid of Christmas, but keep 7 because you still want to add those 7 days. Christmas dot add years. And then we should theoretically, time is not defined. Where do I still have time?
Where are we
here?
doing that? Yeah.
New time. Do I still have time?
Is it somewhere in our library? Did we reference the wrong thing?
Index.js 5. Whoa. Import time. That should be a default, so it shouldn't matter. I saved this. Gonna refresh. Okay. Oh, maybe I just didn't save one of them. I don't know. We're good.
All right, cool. There we go. So now we've got our constructor. There's our date object with the date property.
And then those functions are on our prototype. Very cool.
Now, there are a couple of other things I think we need to do here. So, just a quick question: is the stream fuzzy for anybody else, or is it just internet being terrible right now?
I hope. I always hope, and this is nothing against you, Chris. I always hope it's just you.
I mean, me too. That would be better. Okay, always. Cool. Oh no, and then it just came through clear. It was definitely something on my end. All right, cool. Perfect. So we're creating this date using a single argument. So inside our time library, we have just that single argument. But there are a lot of ways that someone could create a date. So if we jump over to index.js first, we could, instead of that string, we could pass in 2021, for example. So we'll just
do number.
Get rid of the whole string. We're just going to do numbers. So 2021, comma 12. Oh no, L would be 11. I'm sorry, because of index is starting at 0, comma 25. Okay. Our library as written will not properly respect that. It will only take the 2021 and it's going to give us that date.
Got it.
Yeah. So we want to fix that. So inside our time well, actually, there's a nice way to do this using REST parameters and the spread operator, but we're going to be adding in a second argument for options later, and doing that would mess with it. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to wrap that comma separated list in an array. So where we've got, these dates, if we can wrap that in an array, that way it's just a single argument with our values in order. And if we jump over to time.js now, we're going to make a modification to our constructor.
Okay.
So before we set our date, the first thing we want to do is check if it's an array. So could you create an if statement there? And for this, type of is not reliable actually, because type of array returns
object. It's going to be an object, right? Really obnoxious.
So we can do if array is array. So capital A on the array. Array is array, and then pass in date. We actually want to make this a negative check. So we're going to put a bang before the array is so the exclamation point. There we go. So if this item is not an array, we're going to make it one. So we'll redefine it. So let's go date equals. And then we'll just create a new array and pass the data into it. So it'll be a date with the first item here. And so we're doing kind of this weird thing where we're always going to accept an array, and then we're going to use the spread operator to pass in a series of arguments into our new date constructor. It's just this really weird kind of workaround here. So if you tried to use a date string like December 25th, 2021, we're going to convert it into an array and then we'll break that array into its parts in the new date. So where we have new date, and then we're passing in that date parameter.
Yeah.
If you can just prefix that with 3 dots, it will make our life magical. There we go.
Okay, cool.
So what this is doing is it's taking that array and then it's converting it into a comma separated list of arguments. So if you pass in 1 argument, it'll create a new date from that 1 argument. If you pass in an array of numbers, it'll pass them in the way they're supposed to be. This also gets us around the whole, you create a new date with an undefined variable. So if someone passes in nothing, it'll create a new date for literally this moment.
Huh. Okay, right.
Before. Yeah. And so now if we save this and jump over to the browser, we should see that it actually works the way we would like it to. Did we not save something? Did index.js get saved? Yes, it did.
Interesting.
Oh,
I have to hard refresh.
I'm wondering if it's like caching the JavaScript file.
Yeah,
there we go. So now it's working as expected again, which is lovely. That's what we want.
Cool.
Let's look at chaining. So some of, I think, people's favorite libraries allow you to chain methods together. So like if I wanted to add 7 days and add 1 year in one line, so down where we have like modify the date, right? Instead of having that second line, what if we could add all of that in one swoop? Our library doesn't support that right now, but that is a really easy thing to.
Okay.
So if we jump over to time.js, you can't do this with, well, so let me just back up. The way this works is any method that you want to be chainable, at the end of it, you return this. And the this keyword refers to the instance. And so by returning the instance back out, you send with it all of the attached methods that are able to be called. So you're going to add a day, and then the thing that you called it on gets passed right through, so you can call additional on it. You can only do this on functions that don't already return something. So our get days and get months methods, this won't work because they're already returning a string. But for all of our add methods, we can return this at the end, and then we'll be able to chain them.
That's it? That's all we have to do?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. And then this should work?
Yes. We'll need to, I think, save it and then reload.
Yeah. That worked.
Now, one thing you'll notice, we're logging Christmas and it's saying January 1st, 2023. And that's technically true. But imagine a situation where you wanted to take a date and add some time to it to create a new date. So, I wanted, I don't want to modify Christmas. I just want to get the date that's 7 days in a year away from Christmas and save that to its own variable. Right now, you would have to get Christmas.date, pass it into a new time constructor. It's kind of annoying. So what we want to do, and again, this is not appropriate for every library. We want to add immutability. This is something that Moment.js and Day.js do right now, where the thing you're getting out is a new instance and not modifying the original. So Christmas will remain unchanged from when you create it. And you can use these methods to modify and create a new instance instead. Can we, where we have Christmas, can we say let New Year equal? So we'll assign under modify the date where we're doing our add days and add years.
Cool.
Let's assign that. So keep Christmas there, but let's assign it to a new variable.
Cool.
And then we can log Christmas and New Year maybe, so we can see them both. Just because it'll be nice to see how Christmas remains unchanged.
Cool.
And now, fun little trick here. If we jump over to time and we go down to our add methods again, where we're returning this, what we actually want to do is, let's see, where do we want to start? So let's start with add years. We need to do 2 things here. Ultimately, what we're going to do is this. We are going to return new constructor and pass in the new date that we want to create. This is about to get really heady. So
okay, I'm strapping in.
On.
Jack, get ready. Here we go.
So let's do this. So let's define first we'll create a new date object because we don't want to overwrite this date. So let's say let date equal, or let D equal if you want to keep it shorthand, whatever. Let equal new date. And we'll pass this dot date in. So we're going to create a new date object.
Cool.
And then we are going to, where we've got this date set full year equals this date get full year plus n. We are actually going to run that on this new date that we've just created.
Okay, so how would I do that? Oh, yeah, just after?
So copy. I should have had you create the new date.
You want me to move it up? That you're saying?
Yeah, perfect. There you go. Cool. Bam. So now we can replace this date, all references, with D. Or if you wanted to call that date for clarity, that's fine too. I do it just so I don't get confused with what's there.
No, that's helpful.
And now we're going to return new constructor and pass in that date object as the instantiator, because you can create a new date object from an existing data, which is really
cool.
So we need to do some version of this with each of our add methods. Where we're creating a new date and then returning a new constructor from it.
So I'm going to drop that D equals, and this one's not an add, so we're leaving that one alone. Then we have D dot set full year. So anywhere it's this dot date, I'm going to replace it with D.
Except the constructor. We just need to make sure we didn't.
And then return new constructor dot, or not dot D, but new constructor, and then passing in D. Got it. Okay. So when this gets called, it assigns a new date to D and then runs our, so set date is not one of our functions. That's the date.
I'm so sorry. I never properly explained that. So set date and get date are native methods on the date object. And we're combining them to add days instead of having to know what they are. It's just a little shorthand here.
Yeah. So the add days is just a nice like abstraction, so you don't have to go in and do this kind of messier stuff that gets a little confusing. It's a bit more of like a logical way to add days, but it's also just an example for chat. So like we don't need to get into like, is this the perfect way to do this?
Because it's probably not. But
that's okay. Cool.
So if we were to just look at index.js for a sec, just to kind of explain what's going to happen here. So when we call add days, we're creating a new time instance with our kind of our modified days. That gets passed along to add years, which creates another instance, which gets returned out and then ultimately assigned to the new year variable. I'm not worried about creating a ton of instances because object-oriented programming and kind of using the constructor prototype is very memorable. It's one of the reasons why jQuery never really cared about the fact that people were creating new instances every time they.
Chris, we're getting a little bit of audio trouble. Can you do two quick things? And I apologize because I think I botched it. Can you mute yourself in Discord and unmute yourself in OBS Ninja?
Sure. Hold on.
Awesome. I think that's going to fix it. We're just losing a couple key words every now and then. And I should have learned from previous streams where that's happened.
How are we doing now? Is that better?
Cool. Yeah, let me just adjust your audio so you're a little bit louder because you're a little softer, but that should be good. Can you give me a fact about JavaScript?
Hello.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. So that should be better. And I'll turn myself down a little bit. All right, awesome. Cool. Guys,
cool. So now if we jump over to the oh, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Just to circle back on a couple things that we lost in your last sentence, it's not memory intensive is what you're saying?
No, it's not, which is one of the nice things about the or attaching to the prototype like that.
Cool.
jQuery used to kind of do this all the time too, where people would create new jQuery instances for the same selectors over and over again. And it was never really a big deal, in part because people didn't care about performance as much back then, but also because referencing the prototype instead of creating a bunch of new information each time makes this very efficient.
Awesome.
So if we jump over to the browser and reload, we should see.
Let's make sure I saved this. And
if I didn't steer you wrong, we should
we're
see.
good.
Bam,
Cool.
look at that.
So this is
there's New Year.
Christmas.
Christmas remains untouched.
As it should. I mean, it's Christmas,
right.
people. And then, that's the date. And someone in chat said, apparently we are in 2023. So this is the result of adding 7 days and 1 year. So in case you're confused there, that is working just properly. We can add 5 years, and that should work just how we expect.
When you add 7 days, it pushes you into January 1st, 2022, and then years kind of adds up from there.
It's the end of the year, people.
Watching.
It's the end of the year. Right? It's a little terrifying, little wild.
So one thing about this, though, where you can really, well, actually, you know what? We'll get into that in a minute. Okay. Let's start with, or let's continue with some settings.
Okay.
So you've got a library, you've got it set up, it's chaining, it's immutable, you're feeling really good about yourself. And then someone comes along and says, hey, this is great, but I need these to show up in Spanish or French, or I don't want to use full day word. I don't want Sunday, Monday. I want sun, mun, or SMT, whatever. You don't want them to have to go touch the core code of your library. You want that to be something that they can do without ever touching the main code. So we're going to add some options to support that.
Awesome.
So let's jump over to time.js, and we're going to add a second parameter to our constructor. Let's call it, for now, let's call it settings. It's eventually going to change, but for now we'll call it settings.
Cool.
We are going to create a new property. So where we've got this date, we're also going to add this dot settings.
Okay. So afterwards?
Yes, or before. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you, Alex. This is your show. I'm just
put it at the top.
I'm just here as a guest. You know, yeah, that works too.
Cool.
It's weird, but we'll do it.
All right. Well, if you're gonna cast aspersions on my placement, Chris,
you know,
it's wrong, but you do whatever you want.
No, I like to keep them all together.
It's perfect.
So we'll assign the settings parameter here, so that parameter that got passed in, we'll assign that as the value for this property.
Cool.
And now inside our get day and get month methods, instead of referencing those objects, don't delete them yet because we're going to need them in a minute. Just leave them there for now. But where it says return, days and then bracket selector, we're going to go this dot settings dot days.
Okay.
And similarly, in months, we are going to, we're going to return this dot settings dot months.
Cool.
And now, if we were to jump over to index.js, we can, as an object on our new time constructor, so where we've got, so after our array, we pass in an object of settings. And let's just do days for now. So let's pass in a days property with an array, and we can call these whatever you want. So for ease of use, for your sanity, if you want to just call them like sun, mun, to, whatever. But let's pass in some days to use here. It doesn't have to be pretty. We just want something that'll functionally work for our demo purposes.
See if I can get them in order. Let's see.
That's
and then
great.
we're done.
Oh, no,
right?
you're there. Yeah, you're good. You're good. Cool. So if we go reload the browser, we're gonna see one thing that works, and then we're gonna see an error, which we're expecting.
Cool.
Oh no, nothing worked because of the error. Cool. So we're getting a type error because we did not pass in a month property, and we're trying to get the month back. So you don't want users to have to pass in every single option every single time to use your library. It's one of those things that you want some sensible defaults, and then if they don't want them, or don't need them or want to override them, you want to give them the flexibility to do that without the requirement.
Cool.
So let's update this so that instead of forcing people to pass in every argument, we can kind of like fall back to some defaults if they don't. Yeah. So over in time.js, yeah. So let's start there. Let's copy and paste that over. Alex, it's like you're reading my mind. I love it.
Well, it makes sense. This is wait, so we're gonna want to do this before
we'll define a new. So let's say let settings equal, and then we're gonna pass in an object.
Okay.
Or let's create we'll create an object, and then you copied months, I think, right? Yeah. So let's start there. We're gonna do the same thing with days.
Awesome. And then are we gonna spread on top of that?
Yeah, we can spread or we can object assign.
Cool.
Basically, we want to merge whatever the user provides into these defaults.
Got it.
Yeah. So if you prefer spread, by all means, I'm an object assign guy.
Okay, let's do it.
I find it a little bit easier to read, but again, that's totally just me. So
is that at the beginning? We do object.
Yeah. So we would type object assign, and then we've got our default object here, and then comma, and then I'm actually going to rename settings to options just to make it clear that they're different things.
Cool.
And so that we're not reassigning an existing variable. And
so we're taking this then?
Yell at us. Yeah.
Cool.
And one nice little thing to do here that's totally optional, but optional. We can give this a default value. So we can say equals and then give it an empty object.
Cool.
I don't think that's actually needed, but just in case.
Doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah. And now, if we reload the browser,
okay, just making sure that settings was settings.
Yeah,
renamed it.
We should see, bam.
Sat.
So now we get Saturday. December falls back to the defaults, and days uses our custom values that we passed in as an override.
Cool.
Now, one little thing about this approach is these properties are fully accessible on the object that you create. So if you jump over to index.js for a second, Alex, I'll show you what I mean. So right after where we're kind of creating a new time instance and assigning it to Christmas. So like where we have let Christmas equals. If you were to log Christmas.date and Christmas.settings to the console, we have access just publicly to both of those properties. And with the date property, I think we'd actually expect that. But settings is really like an internal property that's not intended for external consumption. So if we log here, like getting access to the date, no problem. Don't necessarily want people to see settings. And then more importantly, these can be overridden and broken. So you could set Christmas.date to null or Christmas.settings to null, and then none of our other methods will work because we've overwritten these core pieces of our library that we need. So we want to protect those, and that's what we're going to do now.
Cool.
Yeah. So inside our time library, let's see here. So there's a couple things we want to do. So the first is we want to freeze settings so that it cannot be modified. And so after we've defined it, so if you just scroll down a little bit.
Okay.
So we've got our settings thing here. So now maybe on the next line, we're going to type object.freeze.
Sorry, on the line after this or
right where you have that gap right there. Yeah, so we'll go object.freeze. And then we'll pass settings in. And this prevents settings from being modified. You can't add any new properties to it. You can't change any of the properties in it. We're freezing it. So it's locked in place once we get it defined. The next thing we want to do is we want to set both settings and date as read-only properties. So like object freeze will prevent set properties of the settings object from being redefined, but it will not prevent Christmas.settings from being overwritten yet. So to do that, we are going to use the object define properties method.
Okay.
So I'll walk you through this. New line. You can leave this dot settings and this dot date for now. So type object dot define properties. And then for the first argument, it's the object to define properties on, which in our case will be this.
Okay.
And then the next argument is an object of properties to define. So we'll create an object, and then we're going to have two properties here, date and settings. And this is going to replace this settings and this date properties that we have.
Got it.
Yeah. So you can actually
each
of these. Oh yeah. For now, we'll tackle this in a second. So for each of these, the value is an object with some details on it. One of those details is the value of the property. Another one is a Boolean, writable. If it's true, the property can be overwritten. If it's not defined at all, or if it's false, it can't. So for each of these, we're going to, as a property, so might be easier if you add these on new lines just for kind of readability purposes. So for date and settings. I'm not explaining this clearly. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. You're great. It's like this.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect. So we're gonna get object and then value colon and then whatever we were using for that new date constructor up there. So we're gonna get rid of that.
Got
and
it.
Use this instead. Yeah.
Cool.
Boop. And then we'll do the same thing for settings.
Okay. So instead of
we'll keep that though.
Okay.
So just scroll down a little bit. You can leave that all right there. Where we've got this dot settings equals settings.
Okay.
This goes away, and we've got object value colon. It's a little obnoxious. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I need more caffeine. Is what's happening right here. Awesome.
Cool. There we go.
There we go. Awesome. And so now if we were to let's go over and try and break things. So let's go over to index.js for a second, just for fun. And instead of just logging the date and the settings, let's actually try to redefine them.
Okay.
So Christmas.date equals null, and Christmas.settings equals null.
Cool. And we should, if that freeze worked, and also if that object assign or define properties worked.
Yeah, it should leave these unchanged.
Yeah. So I just make sure I'm saving. Sorry about the flashing back and forth.
Right. So now it's throwing a different kind of error. It's telling us you're trying to overwrite something that you can't.
Okay. So it's going to yell at me about this instead of it's not going to ignore it. It's going to say, you can't do that, buddy. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Now, one other thing we could do that's totally optional, where settings is an internal property, it's really only intended for internal use. A lot of libraries will prefix it with an underscore. It doesn't change anything about the way it behaves. It just kind of indicates this is for internal use only.
Yeah.
It's still publicly accessible.
Right. But at least it's it's not in the same list as all the other things in that same spot. It's just,
It signifies developer intent is probably a good way to think about it. So we don't have to do that. It's just a nice little kind of optional thing you could consider doing if you were building a library.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that leaves us in a pretty good spot so far.
Cool.
The last thing I think we maybe want to do is think about building. Or kind of some build tools here. So right now this is only available as an ES module, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But well, I guess there technically is. So there's a weird little there's two weird little quirks with ES modules if you use them natively in the browser. The first is that imports in JS work a lot like imports in CSS, or at least to the extent that they have the same performance issues. So with our index.js file, when the browser finds the index.js file, it downloads it, it parses it, it says, okay, I need to import this other file, and then it goes and downloads that file and imports it and parses it, and then it can run your code. And so rather than those things happening concurrently, it happens in a chain. And our library only has a single layer of import, but in a larger library, that time.js file might itself be importing a bunch of helper files. Like you might have your utilities spread out across a bunch of different files just to make it easier to manage. And so every time you do that, every nesting of import creates another layer of latency with native ES modules. Okay. And so the other quirk here is, you remember our original library where we were only importing the methods that we needed instead of this, this constructor object. The whole file is still getting downloaded by the browser, even though you only need a couple of methods from it. And so build tools like Webpack or Rollup.js, they do this really awesome thing where they will concatenate all of your imports into a single file for you. So you avoid kind of that tree of downloads that happens in the browser. And then they also do something called tree shaking, where any files that you're not in, or any functions that you're not importing, they just get dropped out. So you end up with a file that has only the stuff you need and only the stuff that doesn't. And that's really useful if you're, doing actual development work. But what I really want to talk about for our purposes here is, if you're writing a library, you may want that library to be used by different developers in a bunch of different contexts. Like someone may want to use ES modules and import stuff. Someone may not want to mess around with that. They just want to load an IFI in the browser and get the whole library. Someone may be working in Node, and that has a slightly different syntax. And what we want to be able to do is write our library once and export it into a bunch of different formats that developers can use. And we probably also want to add a little bit of copyright info at the top of the page, or the top of the file.
That's always my main goal. This thing is
it's all about the copyright. You want to really wield that big stick.
Don't touch this is what I want to say.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Just a big warning, not for production use.
No, but so those are a few goals. I'm interested in seeing how we solve those different things with kind of one solution.
So would you mind opening up the package.json file for me, please? Or JSON, if you're someone who likes to personify your files. So
this is my friend package JSON.
So we've got a really minimal kind of file here where I've got the name of my library, a brief description, a version number, some licensing info, and then the stuff that really matters is down at the bottom. So as a dev dependency, I have just a single dependency right now, rollup.js or rollup. And I have created a little shorthand script that we can run that's going to use a rollup.js config file. So Alex, the first thing we probably need to do here is npm install to get this stuff in our, there we go. Cool. So very small, very lightweight. I mean, as far as npm things go, I know. Go down a rabbit hole of megabytes.
Relatively,
Right. So now all the magic here is going to happen in the rollup.config.js file. You can do this entirely in command line, but it's nice to have a config file where you can actually see what's happening. So would you mind opening that up and I can kind of talk through how that works?
Yeah. Let me just first off, chat. I do want to say something because I don't want to cut Chris off, and I did a bad job of not explaining this beforehand. If you type !wonder, it will show up. Your question will show up here. So wonder, where does Chris like to hang out? So if we do that, I'm gonna come back here and then go there. Your question will go there. That is a spot where we can make sure that the questions kind of get saved. So if Wonky Wombat and I am Chets, I don't want to cut Chris off. So if you could copy paste those and just put !wonder or I wonder, perfect. I am Chets. Let me just make sure it worked. And cool. We will. I promise we will get this by the end. I just want to make sure. I'm not stopping Chris every 2 seconds, but I also don't want to lose your question. So please pop it there if you've got a question that I have not gotten to or anything like that, because that's on me to make sure that the communication from chat to Chris happens. Chris is focused on this, rightfully so.
That's a great question, by the way. I promise I will get to that.
Cool.
Cool. So looking at the rollup.config.js file,
Yes.
we are doing a couple of things here. Let's actually scroll to the bottom of the file first, and then I'll get to the stuff at the top.
Cool.
So Rollup supports a handful of formats. It's really, really nice. Like you can input one file and spit it out in a bunch of formats. And I've dropped a link there to the full list. We don't need to go there right now.
Yeah,
the three that I care about most are Iffy, which is going to give you a revealing module pattern style, like classic time dot whatever kind of library. ES, which will spit out an ES module file. And in our case, it's really not going to do much of anything because the file is already just a single file. But if we were importing a bunch of utility functions into time.js, it would smush them all into a single file for delivery,
Awesome.
which is really useful. And then CJS is CommonJS, which is the format that Node uses. And it's going to kind of put the little wrapper around it that Node needs to do its magic.
Awesome.
Rollup lets you export just a kind of a single configuration object or an array of configurations. So here I'm using my formats array and the map function to create a new array from that array. And each item in the array is an object with our options. I know it's a little convoluted and roundabout.
I think I see what it is. Yeah. And then those get passed in. Yeah. Banner is what exactly?
Yeah, so we're going to look at that in just a sec.
Cool. Sorry, I'm jumping around.
Yeah, no worries. I'll get to that in a sec. So the key things here, you're returning an object with your kind of your details. So the input is the file that you want to take and do stuff with, in this case, time.js. And then we are going to output it into a new file, time.whatever that format is, .js. So time.iffy.js, time.es. time.cjs. That way, I'm grabbing the browser version, the ES version, whatever. The format is the type of format to export it to. And these are like Rollup.js's preferred names here. So I'm taking the current format that we're looking at. Name is not required for some of these formats, but it is for the Iffy. So I just include it on all of them because I'm lazy and it's easy and it'll ignore it if it doesn't need it.
Cool.
Exports, I'm saying auto. I just want Rollup to figure out what to do with it. That works like 99% of the time. If there's a problem, it'll throw an error in the console and you can Google it and it'll tell you what's going on. The last thing you had asked about banner. So most publicly distributed libraries have some sort of like copyright banner at the top that says what the package is, its version number, description, copyright, that kind of thing.
Cool.
So we can create that dynamically from our package.json file. And it's super, super awesome. So up at the very top here, I'm actually importing the package.json file and assigning that object to pkg as a variable. And then inside this banner string, I'm using the name, the version, the description, the license information from that file as my banner. And I like this because it means I never have to change my rollup.config file and I can just drop it into all my projects.
That's really nice.
The only other thing I'm doing here is I am dynamically creating the copyright year using, ironically, the new date object because this is JavaScript and I'm using the get full year method to get the current year. So anytime I do a new build, if the year has changed, it updates the banner with the current year.
Cool.
So that's what this file does. So in the console, if you were to run npm run.js, it should, assuming I didn't totally screw up this file,
like that,
compile our file into a handful of different formats. Fingers crossed. Okay.
Seems like it's done. Where does that build to?
No. So right in this case, I just had it go right into the root. I didn't do any sort of like nesting distribution file or anything. But so that's the CommonJS one. That's the one Node would use. And then the ES format, if you were to scroll to the bottom of that one, Alex, you would see that that's exporting out our constructor as the default. Slightly different format than we wrote it as, but it'll do the same thing.
Right.
And then the Iffy is going to have that whole thing wrapped in a named revealing module pattern using the old school var for maximum browser compatibility.
Got it. So I can write how I want to. So yeah, so that's one thing that I'm curious about. We just happened to land on the object-oriented way of doing things, but we could have stopped back when we had. I'm trying to think of how would you describe like.
Oh yeah, so if we had done like just a simple utility library instead of like a constructor, yeah, so we could have stopped there and
still done Rollup and still gotten a result.
And we would
like
still
this.
use Rollup, and the difference there would be this would export. We would change it instead of time with a capital T, we would use the lowercase t.
Cool.
And then at the end of this, like if you scroll down, it's returning constructor. It would return an object with all of our exports. Like it would just know.
Kind of like how we were doing before. Got it.
Yes. So what we were doing manually, this would do automatically for us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is really cool.
So, yeah. And so this is basically how I build all of my open source things. I use a slightly modified version of this. I have a little bit more going on in my Rollup file. I have like an object of configurations that I can toggle on and off on a project by project basis. But for getting you started, this is a really kind of simple, out of the box way to get moving.
Yeah, no, this is excellent. We covered a lot of ground.
We did. I talk fast. I'm sorry.
Oh my!
It's a New England habit.
No, man.
You're from up here, Alex.
Yeah, I'm from Philly. We are not known for our slow soliloquies or our patient way of speaking. We are absolutely fast talkers that have to slow it down for the stream most days. But no, man, no. Like I'm not saying, oh, that was fast. It was. We covered a lot. We did a lot. We went through, created the simple utility library. We made the library modular and tree-shakeable. That's always generally my preference to pull things in. I think part of it is knowing it's tree-shakeable is just one of those things that helps me sleep at night. You know what I mean? Or
for sure.
I can justify pulling in that library if anyone's like, what, why'd you pull this thing in? Like, oh, it's tree shakeable. You can't touch me. I'm good.
Historically, constructors were like the thing everybody loved. And I think over the last year or two, we've started to see more of a shift towards tree shakeable libraries. Like the stats can be misleading here too. I forget the name of it, but I know there's that site that kind of like rates libraries on their weight. Yeah, right. And so they have day.js rated as better than like date.fns because it's smaller if you include everything, but it's not tree shakeable, and date.fns is. Right. So you can get a really small bundle with date.fns depending on what you're doing. And that rollup config file, you can use that to take your index.js file, for example, and spit out just the stuff you need. Like if you ran it on index.js, it would pull in the time library and then the additional code and then wrap the whole thing in an immediately invoked function expression for you. And, so you can use that for building kind of your entire project if you want to. Cool. You just need to change a couple of settings in there.
Awesome. So then we worked on making it chainable and immutable. The hooks thing was actually a question by, I'm going to see who it was.
Oh, yep.
Was it by Ed? No, by Wonky Wombat. Yeah, so I checked off the add hook step. Do you want to touch on it? So Wonky says,
so
what are the actual hooks in this library?
Yeah, I'm using that in a more abstract sense. So that for me, that was the options and settings piece where we, we accept the object of like days, and months. Another thing we could have done here that we didn't is emit custom events when we call specific methods.
Oh, cool.
That works better for some libraries than others. It's kind of an odd fit for this library.
But, yeah, I see what you mean.
But how do you call back
functions?
Yeah, so you could have an event that gets emitted, like let's say date add, right, where you're adding details to a date. And then you could listen for that with the Document Addeventlistener method. And you could do weird things like say, if the date that's being created is going to end up further into the future than the year 2023, don't let it happen. Just like stop that from happening. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you could, you know, and that could be a thing you do. So like that's one additional hook you could add to a library that we didn't do here. It would make what we wrote a lot more complex, and we can get into it if people are interested. But I know we have a bunch of questions, and I'd love to make sure we get to those too.
Yeah, so we can put kind of a pin in that hooks. So we have a confetti thing. I'm not sure if it just showed up. Did it?
It did.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, that's our confetti thing. They can use pretty much any emoji, like the standard emojis, and just toss them in your face. Hope that's not too distracting.
That's great. I saw the anchors at the beginning, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah,
that spoke to my heart, Alex.
Forget who that was. Yeah, right. On brand. Well done. For Trosco's operating system. Perfect. There you go. Nice. Wonky says, okay, thanks. So we'll hook in the sense that a user can hook into your library with their own code.
Yes, not hook in the, I realize now that's
React,
a convention in
kind
like
of.
React and Preact. And so I can assume that brought up some, not like that. More like hooks developers can use to customize what your library does without touching it.
Cool.
Not hook in the literal React hook sense.
Right. Not like use date or something.
Damn it, I'm constantly fighting
time.
with React conventions now.
Yeah, when something gets popular and starts to introduce terms that exist elsewhere, it's tough to kind of keep those terms pure or keep them the way that they were. Let's head back to Wonder. I am Chet's asks, I wonder, is there a reason you are not writing this with the ES6 class syntax, considering we have build tools to transpile it back to whatever our target audience is?
Yes. I guess technically once you throw, so a couple of reasons. One, I'm old and I don't like them. Is really honestly the biggest
all right, that's
reason.
The stream. Bye, everybody.
I'm old and I don't like them. I've been writing with kind of prototypal inheritance since before classes were a thing. And for me, it's easier, faster to write with constructors. I find for beginners who come from no other programming language experience, they often find it easier to wrap their heads around because what you're doing is more explicitly written. If you are from a class-based language already, I find those students tend to find JavaScript classes a little bit easier to wrap their head around. And so given that it's kind of a mixed bag, depending on who you're talking with, I usually start with prototypal inheritance. The other thing is I do not like to use transpilers if I can avoid it. And I just really like to keep my dependencies to a minimum. And so if you're comfortable with that, by all means, there's a few things that transpilers will bolt in for you, but that classes don't support natively out of the box yet. Most notably, if you want to have just like private internal methods that aren't attached to the prototype, there is kind of a way to do that. That's still, it's still in spec, but it's experimental. It's not like official yet. And I believe transpilers will kind of handle that properly, but I don't like to use it because I would prefer just to not transpile my stuff. So it's pure laziness on my end is really what it comes down to.
Well, and preference. And and I think what you just said about your experience as a teacher, I think, is completely valid and important in that you've seen both sides of that, and you in your experience, one is easier than the other. So that's great. So Dendon Guy just quick asked, how do you explicitly make a library tree shakeable?
Oh, great question. So the trick there is so constructor patterns cannot be tree shakeable, but any library where in your ES modules you are exporting an object of functions, it becomes tree shakeable when you I'm trying to think of a good way to articulate this because I don't have a proper computer science background and I know I'm going to say the wrong thing.
I don't either. So yeah, we can say when you do the thing next to the thing, it's how it works.
So when you put the thing in the doobly-doo. No, so when you export an object of methods instead of a default or not just a default, but a constructor like we are here, where there's only one thing being exported and all of the methods are attached to it. So the early version of this, where we had a bunch of helper functions all getting exported out, when you import those into another file and then run a build process on them, like Rollup or Webpack or whatever you use, will drop all of the non-imported methods out of the file that it ultimately compiles. And that's where the tree shaking happens. So a library is tree shakeable if it exports an object of methods. And then the tree shaking happens in the build tool or the bundler that you use. Tree shaking, unfortunately, doesn't work with native ES modules. I'm realizing as I say that can be confusing. A native ES module loaded in the browser will not tree shake, but a build tool will tree shake an ES module if you're exporting an object of things.
So like if in my index.html I like include from a CDN this library, it's not going to get tree shaken because it's pulling in that entire thing like from the CDN. That's just not going to happen there. But if I'm running it through a build tool and it's and I'm importing those specific functions, then I'll only pull those specific functions into my bundle when I send that with my site. Is that right?
That is so much better articulated than I said it, Alex. Thank you.
It is only because you blanked so I could blank. I'm not sure what the verbs are here, but like you put all that out on the table so that I could pick and choose.
I mean, you are correct. Things. I did blank. So
you certainly did blank, and I also blanked. But there's a phrase there, chat. Help us out. This is dangerous Mad Libs. Honestly, I shouldn't set it up. Awesome, and Dendon guy appreciated it. Awesome. So we got another one. Oh man, look at my CSS go. That is really top-notch CSS, Alex. Great job on this this page. What happened? Oh man, that's quite the disaster. Let me see. I wonder. Sorry, just trying to find this page and open. Like I can actually like interact with this page if I can find the actual element that I'm trying to get to. Almost there. Thank you for staying with us, chat. Here we go. Interact. There we go. So now I can hover it and stuff. What is going on now?
I do see Alex.
Oh, it's
Alex
a link.
Asked, I wonder where Chris likes to hang out.
Yeah, that was a lot.
No,
chat
I know,
keeps asking that. Chat is really curious.
Really? At home.
Yes. Right. Especially now.
In my pajamas.
Away from people. Away from COVID. Okay, we answered that one. Wonky Wombat at Hooks, we answered that. Ed asks, I wonder with all these methods named exports, constructor, iffy, is there a best or worse approach, or is it purely just preferences and trade-offs? Is there a use case where some option wouldn't be optimal?
Yeah, no, great question. So we touched on this a little bit, but it is at a high level. I hesitate to say there's a best versus worst approach. It is, for the most part, preferences and trade-offs. Alex, you and I talked a little bit about how, something with importable, like individual functions that can be tree shaken is, I think for both of us, often preferable, especially with bigger libraries, because it allows you to justify using the library versus like doing a different approach.
Right.
And so you can get some, especially with bigger libraries. Like if you were using something like Lodash, right? Like that as a prototypal inheritance kind of situation would be a nightmare because it's 30 kilobytes of JavaScript. And if you're only using a couple of methods, you can get it down to like, I don't know, 150 bytes if you really wanted to. But there are times where prototypal inheritance is absolutely a better choice. And I think something like, well, I guess you could technically make an argument in both directions, but I look at something like jQuery, which uses a constructor pattern under the hood. And their prototypal inheritance is a huge boon because it allows you to instantiate like thousands of jQuery instances on a site and have very minimal impact on performance because you're just constantly referencing that one kind of prototype for all of your instances. And I guess you could technically argue like being able to just pull in like the few methods you need might actually be better. And I probably wouldn't disagree with you, but you know, for the type of use case they're going for,
Right.
the constructor pattern maybe makes sense there. But it is really a combination of trade-offs and things, and I lean back and forth on which one I like better depending on what I'm trying to do.
Nice. I think that jQuery example is an interesting one because jQuery not being cached and shared by every site you go to is a different kind of jQuery, right? Because like as you think of jQuery right now, between 5 different sites, your browser's using the same file over and over again. And if instead each site was picking out the methods that it's using and bundling those and sending those along, right? Like it gets into a weird gray area of, yes, it's more JavaScript, but you only had to download it once versus, yeah.
Yeah, and I think where you see constructor patterns used more often and to better effect is less with helper libraries like what we've done here, and more with like DOM libraries. So, you know, I'm thinking like there are libraries to add accordions, to add, you know, I'm sorry if your company makes you do this, but like carousels or like photo libraries, things like that. You know, and they're being able to create unique instances, each one maybe having some slightly different things about it. You know, you're passing in some customizations, and you want to be able to manage that instance, turn it on, turn it off. A lot of them have methods to like toggle to the next slide or do whatever. In those situations, the constructor pattern probably makes more sense. A bunch of utility libraries or utility functions around that would get real messy really fast. And so, yeah, anything related to like actually creating DOM components, constructors maybe make more sense, or OOP or classes or whatever kind of flavor of that you prefer.
That's a great point. That makes, yeah, like we just said a carousel component that's just a bunch of utility functions doesn't, I don't know. I'd be interested to see that kind of thing, to see if I actually like it. But yeah, Ed says, nice, thanks. Also, just want to say, Chris, you explain everything very well and understandably. So,
oh, thank you.
There you
Every
go.
now and then. Every now and then I'm not a bumbling idiot. So.
I think you're hitting 100 here. So, and VJ asks, I wonder what actually is an event-driven hook here. I'm not sure if anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Do I have a good example of that? Yeah. Alex.
Yeah.
Would you mind visiting vanillajstoolkit.com for me, please? Awesome.
All right.
And then if you click on helpers.
Helper functions,
yeah,
right
perfect.
Here. Cool.
And then the one on here is called Emit Event. All right. So that looks lighter on screen than I intended it to, and I'm really sorry about that. But we can.
I'm dropping this link in chat so they can see it.
Cool.
As well. I don't have a way to.
Yeah, so we can talk about this for a second.
Cool.
So in JavaScript there is a new custom event object that allows you to literally create a custom event. Like in JavaScript, you have events for like all your standard DOM interactions, click and scroll and resize. You can create your own custom events, and you can emit them in the browser. You can emit them on the document. You can emit them on individual elements. Like if you had a DOM library, you could emit custom events when a thing, like when a carousel slides to the next slide, for example. And you can also pass along some details. Inside this helper function right here, where you see this new custom event, the type is the type of event, like the name you want associated with it. Cool. And then you've got an object of options, bubbles. So will it bubble up to its parent DOM elements? Is it cancelable? So if someone said event prevent default, should it stop this event from actually happening?
Got it.
And detail is this really kind of amorphous property that could be a string, a number, an object, an array. It's just a place for you to shove a bunch of details about the event that otherwise wouldn't go anywhere else. Cool. So the way it works is you create a new custom event, and then you run the dispatch event method on the element you want the event to happen on, passing in the event as an argument. And so this allows you to maybe create an event and then run it on a bunch of different elements at different times if you want. The reason this helper function is returning it back out is you can actually like assign the dispatch event, what gets returned from the dispatch event, to a variable, and then check to see if it exists or not. So it's going to return a Boolean, and if some event listener somewhere calls event prevent default, that Boolean will return false. Otherwise, it will return true. And
Cool.
So what I would often do in a library is I would take this emit event helper function and drop it in there, just as a nice little wrapper for me. And then I would call a custom event. So in the context of our, well, actually, you know what, Alex, do we want to do just for fun? Do we want to pull this in just to kind of show what it might look like?
Sure.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Cool. Do you mind copy pasting this into time.js?
Let's do it.
Yeah, and we'll kind of talk through what that might look like.
Cool.
All right.
Time.js. Just at the bottom, or
so,
where at?
Let's throw it up at the very top.
Okay.
I like to put my helper functions before, like the constructor, before everything.
Cool.
Yeah. There we go. And now we won't put this in the whole library, but just let's scroll all the way down to like our add year function just for fun.
Get day, get month, add year. Here we go.
Yeah. So after we set full year, yeah. So go ahead and we'll type emit event. And there's a bunch of different naming conventions here, but the one I like best, it was popularized by Basecamp. I've seen them use it in a bunch of their things, and for better or worse, I think it's actually a pretty good convention.
Cool.
So it's called, well, I call it the prefix kebab. So you have like a prefix that you use with your entire library. So in this case, let's say time. So we'll type time, and then we're actually going to go colon.
Oh.
And then the kebab comes in after the colon. So any event in this library is going to be time, whatever. And then you might have like add dash years, or you may have just a generic add that you use for all of them.
Like this?
So I wouldn't lead it with the kebab.
Okay.
But you might go something like that. And now this
Cool.
becomes an event that you can listen for.
Got it.
Years added. So that is the name. And then the next argument on here, or the next parameter, is an object of options, or an object of details. I'm sorry.
He flung kebabs into the air.
I love it. That is absolutely amazing.
So good.
So for our details for this one, we probably want to oh no, you don't need to. The object is the details in this particular case. So we might want to include the amount of time that we're adding here. So let's say amount colon n. Right. So that's the amount of time we're adding, the number of years we're adding.
Cool.
One other thing you might want to do, since we're going to be returning a new constructor, you might want to, for example, assign that constructor to a variable and then have it as a property. We won't have to do that now, but like it could be something you could do. So rather than return new constructor, you could have like let instance equal new constructor. Or C. Perfect. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
And then return C, or
but you'd want the emit event to come after it. And then you can it would go in the object, so it's still like a property of that details object. So then someone can get the new instance and the amount of time, and by having the new instance, they'll be able to
What's the
find
key
out.
here?
Whatever you want. We could call it time, or like date, or instance, or whatever you want. Yeah.
Got it.
There you go. Now if we jump over to our index.js file, we can do, this is going to get emitted on the document. So before we do any of our methods, let's add document.addEventlistener.
Here.
It literally can go anywhere in this library as long as it happens before our actual events. We're going to listen for the time : add-year event.
Is it year or years? I don't remember years. Yeah.
It's years. Yeah, you're right. Good call. Thank you.
I did not know. Just had to check.
And then for our callback function here, we're going to pass in that event object, and we can just log the event details so we can see what this does for us.
The event object, is that just Christmas?
No. So in an Addeventlistener, so this is going to be a callback function. Yeah,
right.
There we go. So you can do your fancy little arrow functions if you want there, Alex.
I do.
Let's pass in a parameter for the event. That's going to get automatically passed in, but let's create so you can call it E or event or whatever you want.
Okay.
Inside.
The E. Yeah. Sorry. I'm so in the time space. I'm like the event. You mean like Christmas? That event? For some reason, of course, E. Yes.
Yeah. No. Sorry. You're all good. You're all good. Yeah. Cool. And so then in here, let's go ahead and console log e.details. No, it's .detail. It's not details. I always mess this up.
Cool.
Cool. And now if we jump over to the browser, when we add years, we should actually see that get logged to the console. So up there, you see how it says amount 5, and then we've got our new constructor object right there. So we could do all sorts of weird stuff. So if we jump back over to time.js for a second, right now we're just emitting the event, but you could wrap that in an if statement. So let's say, let's assign it to a variable. So do me a solid first. So let's go, So let's say cancel equal, and then do a bang, the exclamation point right before emit event.
That
cool. So yeah. So this is doing a weird like reverse Boolean kind of thing. So if emit event fails, it's going to return false, and then cancel will be true.
Got it.
So now after there, we could say if cancel. So if this was canceled, we are not going to return a new constructor. In this case, let's return this instead so that the chaining won't break.
Cool.
But it won't create like a new instance. And now in our index.js file, we could do something like really weird. Like we could say, we're going to log that detail, and we could just outright say event prevent or e prevent default, or we could do it conditionally. Like if e detail n is greater than 3, like you're only allowed to add 3 years at a time if it's greater than that. Except it's not n, is it? What did we call it? We called it amount. I'm very sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I wasn't. Chat, we are not like the C and the stuff. This is just like kind of shorthand stuff. So not our best.
No, this is sloppy coding because we're just moving fast.
Yeah, we're just moving fast. Just try to give an example, but
yeah. So so here you could do something like event prevent default.
Yeah.
Or e prevent default. I'm so used to using like big full.
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
And what will end up happening?
So that I like the shorthand, but it's not as clear for people.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm same. And so what we should see happen here is we will still end up with New Year, but it will not add those years. It'll be the version before it. So see how the date on that is 2022 instead of 2027 now?
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
So we added a hook for our library.
We canceled it. Got it. Okay. But
and so what this does is events like this, custom events like this, are going to provide hooks for developers to do weird stuff with your library that you didn't think of. Like, you know what? We're not going to let people add years. We're only going to allow them to add so many years. Like in a real app, you'd probably show an error on the page or emit, some sort of like modal window letting them know or something like that.
Right.
But like, I don't know what someone might want to do with this, but there's all sorts of weird things developers could if they wanted to. And that's the point.
Yeah. Like we're coming up with a contrived reason because we started out with this date library idea, and this is like, it's kind of tough to work one in. So yes, chat, it's a bit contrived here, but this is how you would go about this sort of thing. And that's really cool. And I just want to point out, like, Chris, I know this is the world that you live in, but chat, like, you can pull this in anywhere. This is not a React specific library. And once you go over to Svelte or something, whoops, out of luck. Or once you hop over to 11T, like, now you have to rely on a React library or whatever. Like, this is JavaScript. This can just be used anywhere. Yeah. So I do want to stress how cool that is.
And again, that you should go create your own date library. I would strongly recommend against
everyone should try date. I hear nothing but good things about dates. I hear they're simple. JavaScript makes them easy. What can go wrong? Go make your own Calendly. Don't use Calendly. Make your own. Don't use Google Calendar. Don't trust it. Everyone roll your own. And send me invites to things. Petition to officially renamed convention to Christmas to prevent for event parameter. Yes, everyone for your events. Is now Christmas. I approve. And Dendon Guy says, would you be able to mutate detail and use that in the library, or would that be bad? Mutation's always tricky.
Yeah.
Especially time zones. Yes, Dendon Guy. Those are the easiest.
Time zones are the easiest. I'm trying to think. You could. I probably wouldn't. I get weird about. I don't know. I'm gonna go with I don't know on this one. I'm really comfortable saying I don't know. I'm not entirely sure.
We celebrate that here. Absolutely. Yeah. We never want you to pretend to be all knowing and perfect, and that's not a realistic standard for anyone to try.
If we were earlier in the stream, I might have a better answer, but
you're pretty baked at this point.
Slowly rotting into jello.
Yeah. Absolutely. I totally know what you mean. We are approaching 2 hours. I just want to say I really, really appreciate you coming on and hanging with us. Before I let you go, though, you don't get to go that easy. Can you plug your stuff? Tell us what you're working on, what you want us to check out, where we should follow you, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So if you remember absolutely nothing else, head over to gomakethings.com/frontendhorse, and you can get the source code from this project, the boilerplate, a bunch of other articles and resources related to everything we talked about, ES modules, writing libraries, etc. Bigger picture, I write I publish a short newsletter with developer tips every weekday. You can sign up for that over at gomakethings.com. I also create a bunch of I keep them when I say short, I mean it. They are like really short and focused. Incredible. And thank you. It's a lot, but it's awesome. Yeah. I also have a bunch of ebooks, courses, workshops. If you want to like really dig into this kind of thing, I actually have a new session of workshops that are going to be kicking off on January 10th, and they're going to be awesome. Again, all that is over at gomakethings.com. That's like my hub on the internet. And if you want to yell at me and tell me how wrong I was about something, you can find my contact information there too. So that'll be fun.
So like just for the workshop, I have not taken one of your workshops, but I do want to say that the way that you walked things through your organization around what you taught on here, I am willing to put money down that your workshop is fantastic. Just because
thank you.
Your teaching style is great. Like I think chat would agree that this was excellent. And yeah, I would assume that your workshop would be no different. So yeah, I as I said, I have not taken it, but I am willing to bet it's excellent because you were great today. Thank you for your time.
Thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, the workshops are really, it's this kind of thing. So every other day you get a project, like a little project, and it builds on the one you did the day before. And that's after about 6 weeks, you have like a ton of cool stuff you built.
Yeah. And you have a real depth of knowledge that when people threw questions at you, you're like, all right, let's go check this out. And like I said, your articles, like you're just an incredible resource. I can't thank you enough.
The pleasure was all mine, Alex. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for the follow. Yeah, so if you are not following, I would really appreciate the follow, partly because that means you have a very good chance of joining us on Friday. Before I talk about Friday, was there anything else you wanted to mention, Chris?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Because I do want. We're raising money for Friday, so that's why I've been plugging this thing so hard. You might have seen in chat already that there is this thing coming up. I am being a little bit spammy with it, chat. I'm sorry, but we're trying to raise $10,000, and I'm like, I rarely like beg for follows or beg for anything to like please come to this. Please. This is the one time of the year I'm doing this.
Look at those guests.
Really great guests. Fantastic, like just kind, generous, brilliant, smart people. I'm
just like
very
the
excited.
Best people and Dave Rupert, you know?
Clip it. Clip that. Someone is Dave in chat? I hope Dave's
I don't know if
lurking in chat.
But Dave,
he will sometimes pop up towards the end of an episode. That was so good.
I love Dave. He's one of my he was with me early in my dev career. So
that's fantastic. That's great. Yes. So please sign up for this. We have sponsors that are matching donations. We are trying to clean the ocean. We're doing a Team C's fundraiser to try to remove 10,000 pounds of trash from the ocean. But seriously, Dave Rupert, Kevin Powell, George Francis, Monica Powell, not related. I always have to say that because people are like, are those two? No, they're different. I didn't even realize I had two Powells until someone mentioned it. Michael Chan, Josh Como, Kent C. Dodds, Chris Coyer, Varun Vachar, Cassidy Williams, Scott Hanselman, and Amelia Wattenberger. Like, it's a fantastic dream team. Please register for this, and please come and hopefully, and tell your friends, tell your parents. Let's raise a whole bunch of money. Let's do something really good for the world that we all share. Super excited for this. So would appreciate if everyone came to that and told all of your friends and family about it. Because to be completely honest, like mask off, I'm nervous about hitting the goal. So I'm trying to get us there. But thank you so much for listening to my spiel at the end. Chat, you were phenomenal. You brought it. We almost hit 100 people today. We might have hit 100. That's huge. Thank you so much to Chris. Oh, and Ben clipped it. I appreciate you, Ben. The best people.
Oh no.
And Dave Rupert. It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, that's amazing.
Dave will be writing a letter, strongly worded letter.
Strongly worded.
The next Shop Talk show is entirely about Chris. Just like Dave ranting for an hour.
I would deserve it. That would be fair.
It would be so great. Dave's just wonderful. All right. We are going to find someone fantastic to raid. I'm not sure if there's anyone out there that we know. I don't seem to have anyone on right now that is... wait, is Dave here? Is Dave actually here? Ben tagged him, but I'm not sure if that's just a joke or what. I'm not sure. I don't know. No, I don't think so. Okay. All right. So we are going to go raid someone. Chat, thank you again. Chris, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Appreciate your time. All right, chat, hang in there. We are going to go find somebody. Take care. Bye, everybody.